And then I make this hello, welcome. And for the people on the call, all of a sudden, I'm just like in my like presenter voice. So, but I know, welcome to class 5 of getting to know your markets. And today, diving into numbers, costs mainly into our enterprises. So, all the different little things that we do and how those numbers work. So, essentially, like a farmer's market or selling to florists and a U-pick, all of these are each going to have their own, income and expenses, and all that income is, it's specific for that enterprise, but you want there to be a foundational enterprise that's going to like feed into your overhead costs. And so that is not something we're covering in this course is the basics of bookkeeping, but there's some good resources out there, and I'll drop them in our resources folder. The National Farmers Union has some good toolkits on, especially in like accounting and some numbers. A gal there, she does some good talks, and then Good Roots hosts like bookkeeping workshops here and there. And so hopping on their newsletter is a good idea. That's who I first learned bookkeeping from. And as we do this number stuff, it's like just looking at it over and over and over again, and eventually it makes a web in the brain, and then you know, hopefully it gets like more and more comfortable. I really recommend, if you haven't already, to be getting a bookkeeping system software set up for your business. Just for kind of talking about numbers and resources, a good intro is Wave. It's a free accounting software. It's a great place to start, and you can do invoices there, and they take a portion of any money that you get from invoices. But then QuickBooks is really kind of the gold standard, and as you get into this work, you'll be seeing that a lot of folks do use QuickBooks. It has a lot of like functionalities, but it's also can be really frustrating to use because it's just like it is what it is. And navigating it can be really challenging. So there's a new bookkeeping software out there called Amherst, Amherst, and they're a farm specific accounting software. They are a bit on the pricier side right now, but it's equivalent with QuickBooks, and they have their own like folks that will help onboard you, or if you already have accounting, it'll transfer in. But I did meet with them on a one-on-one earlier in the year, and I was like, oh, this is great, especially if you're doing grants. If you ever want to do grants, I think Amherst would be your direction to go, because they have built their software specifically to help farmers track grants. Um, so that's an added feature there. So yeah, just plugging that. And then also, if you haven't done so already, just make sure you have that second bank account for, keeping your personal and your business expenses separate. And the sooner you do that, the sooner it cleans it up. And it's really exciting to like put money into your farm business account, even if, and then get going with that. It's a beautiful, energetic like investment into your dream and into the things that you're doing. And, just for Schedule F, that's what you file as a farm. Schedule F, the sooner you can get that going too, that the sooner you're going to be able to start qualifying for some of the USDA programs, especially their loan programs. So, and there's all sorts of stuff. And that gets us into like, why books? Why look at these numbers? Why is this important? One, it's really just important for you as a farmer to have a lot of confidence in your idea and belief, and not have to like be worrying, oh, but is this really working? Am I losing money? I know I am. I'm making tons of money. This is great. And then like having this reality check of like what is actually happening. And so the numbers are really important. I love them. I like spreadsheets, but I do find that when I'm working with farmers and they're like a little uneasy or confused and they're starting to get like really anxious, it's like numbers can be this really grounding force, especially if your income is coming from the farm. Starting with our personal budgets and knowing how much we need to survive, and then moving on into making sure that your farm can provide those numbers for you, is a really powerful tool to have. I like doing my budgets this time of year, starting, as we've been going through the process. Okay, what's the marketing? Who am I going for? And now I'm doing all my 2025 budgets right now for my farm, and it gives me like a good sense. I'm just going to tote my own horn of like, I'm actually going to be able to like really pay myself next year for the farm, which is really exciting. Not like anything crazy, but enough to be able to survive off it. That's my full-time gig. So that's really exciting. And also to support, two other full-time peoples. So that feels like a win. And a big part of that has been this iterative process, and noting that that's like 3 years into the business. And so, every time we're, ending up with like profit at the end of the year, it so often has to go back to reinvesting into our businesses, getting that walk-in cooler space, expanding storage, like matching how much growth, that we want and can handle and can scale appropriately. And so, yeah, I feel like year three is a good year to kind of figure out like, okay, is this working or is this not working? So just like making sure as you're thinking of your budgets, it's like, it may not work the first year. And so maybe that's why you have an off-farm income, or you like really saved up and invested for a long time so that you can allow for the first like few years to making it work. And if you've been doing this work for a long time and it's been, stressful, these numbers are a really good way to just like ground out and like help make really clean decisions. So we're going to see in some of these examples that I have these like summary charts, and I've made them specific for other farms. And so to be able to compare, your different market streams, to really see, like one of my favorite ones is called the CSA and wholesale enterprise budgets. And in that CSA budget, you can look at side by side, what's it like if we figure out how to make a no delivery CSA versus a delivery CSA. And so both of those have their own like, delivery attracts like a, broader community and bigger this and that, but an on-farm CSA pickup is going to promote like community from very close within and save you on driving and a vehicle and those pieces. So, that's when these are really great tools to run scenarios to see what's going to work. Pull income. It's really a good income estimator tool that then goes into your bigger cash flow budget with your income and expenses. Not all enterprise budgets always have this, the expenses that I have in here. And that's really, just helping us, making sure we're thinking, especially about our labor and our time when we're doing this stuff. And so a lot of it is like kind of rough estimates, but it's enough to kind of give a concept of how much labor is it really going to take, especially when it comes to like harvesting big stuff on the food shed budget one. We can sign up for all these things for food shed, but then if we're like adding it up and we're like, oh my gosh, that's going to be 30 hours of harvest a week. Like, how am I going to get that done? It's like a nice check. Same with going to markets or CSA assembly and delivery. It's a great way to like just check ourselves. Like, do we actually have that amount of time? Because our very last class, we're going to talk about how do we actually manage and implement these plans and have the time to do all the things. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. So yeah, that's kind of like the one area of like farmer self-confidence. That other area to have these budgets, as I mentioned, for like the loans, it's like we need budgets and numbers to demonstrate to lenders why they should lend to us. No one's gonna, some people do, but most people aren't going to give you money unless they know that like you have a good idea of where that's going to go, and if it's really going to help your business, or they want to know that they're going to get their money back, essentially. So having these numbers, at least even just a start of them, is great. And so I'm hoping they support you. Anything I'm missing, Hannah, on why numbers are really great? Are you excited for, you said you were excited for this call, so please share why you were excited.
Yeah, I'm excited because don't I don't like intuitively speak numbers and spreadsheets. So I'm excited for it because I know how valuable it is. And I love the way that it helps you see just almost like I feel like it almost provides a little bit of an outside perspective on like
Mm,
what has
mm,
happened. Because you can be so in something and then you have the numbers to kind of back up like wow, I'm here, or like, whoa, I thought that I was doing well and I'm not.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm excited about it because I just feel like this is going to be really helpful for me because trying to put like an example spreadsheet like this together, like that's the absolute last thing that I want to do, but I know how valuable it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. And then on that note, too, is that like office hours are next Tuesday. And so giving folks the chance to kind of like run through these on their own, but then coming into office hours and happy to like troubleshoot and, walk you through some of this stuff. Yeah. What else? Yeah, that sounds good. Why all the numbers? Oh, how often do I do this work? And so I love seeing you, Hannah, tackling this early on, like before you have land and all the things and all the other stuff, because having the brain space to really dive into the numbers, it takes a lot. And it's nice to do it in like the off season and when it's slower, when there's less other demands on your time. And so it's great to get it going, at least a framework or something that you can like putz around with as like a tool. And then it's something you can go back to. So as I said, every year I'm doing budgets for the next year, 2025. And I'm doing that here in like October. Often because I'm trying to plant things, right, for 6 months from now. And so I need to be thinking about my markets now. And how much staff I'm going to have to hire. And am I planting too much or too little? So all that stuff feeds into these decisions. I'll do a really big check at least once a year, probably in like May or June. And that's when I'm checking in on my bigger budget. I do a lot more check-ins, every month to month. But sometimes that can get away from me. So I really make a point like in June to do that like mid-year check to be like, okay, wait, is this working? Is this not? I can see, have I made the income and hit my income targets that I expected by this time? And yes or no. And if no, what do I need to do differently? Why did that not work? And like, how can I shift that so I'm not like keeping on a trajectory that's going to be going off the rails? And that's like one of the important tools and things I've learned too in my first year of business was really like, let's make this plan, set the plan. I'm going to go with this plan and I'm committing to it. And I'm not trying to change my mind every week. That's me trying to change my mind, switch gears and do all the different things. I'm like, God, is this working? It's again, as you said, Hannah, it's this like outside perspective so that we can really have that and not be so stuck in the emotional. Which brings me to that point too of, we want to be looking at our books like at least once a month, if not more often. One of the worst things you can do is just like not look. It may be hard and we maybe have all these stories about numbers and money and income and worth. And if we don't look, we can never, affirm that or like deny that and shift and make different decisions. And so look at your books, look at your books, look at your books. And doing these budgets, you know, especially for those that have been farming for a while, it can be a little daunting because maybe we're worried that the numbers are going to tell us something that we just really don't want to hear. And I want to just like kind of acknowledge that and just like set it off to the side because I really do believe that the power of numbers helps us create the farms that we want to have. And so we can make something work. And we can only make something work if we acknowledge where we're at right now at this moment. And so, what's it like? The best day to plant a tree was yesterday, and the next best day is like today, And so it's like same with books. yeah, maybe if you haven't been looking, that would have been great and make a different decision. But today's the next best day to really take a look and face that. And if anyone ever has any issues, like I really want to make myself available for anybody to ever reach out because it can be a hard thing to do. And I love numbers and um, yeah, just want to support people on their money journeys. So let's get into looking at spreadsheets. Where do we want to start? So, Hannah, I have like a bunch of these enterprises. Um, I have one for Food Shed selling specifically to Food Shed, and I'm thinking I'll probably give a special talk just on Food Shed enterprise budgets at another time with Food Shed. And so I'll skip on that one, but it is a really it's a very customized to the Food Shed crop plan. So anyone that ever wants to sign up for the Food Shed crop plan, I really recommend using this tool. I was able to dial it in with Jose from La Chispa Farm, and he's made some edits too. So it's a great tool. So we'll dive into that later. Then I have another one that's called CSA and wholesale. And so that's again to our CSA customers. There's also a UPIC and farm stand enterprise budget on there, which is fun. And then smorgasbord. Then I'm sharing my personal enterprise budgets that I've built for the upcoming year. And that's selling to grocery stores, it's giving classes, selling directly to florists. Some of our value added products, our herbal products, our dried flower arrangements, and our bouquets. And so that's a good one, especially for kind of thinking of those like how to assemble those smaller things together. And that's a really fun thing about the CSA one as well is that there's a CSA builder tool in there. So, you know, you can kind of think of like, oh, how many items builds a box and that kind of stuff. But do any of those sound relevant for you? Or would you want to
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the CSA.
CSA one?
I think I'd start
Cool.
with the CSA one,
Okay.
or even like I'm looking at.
I'm going to share my whole screen too.
Yeah, I feel like the CSA and maybe even like the wholesale is kind of interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really interesting one. This is a good one to do because it talks about our price points. So, okay, I'm sharing my screen. And this was like the summary side by side. And so for this specific farm, they have been doing a CSA for a really, really long time, and we're really burnt out on the CSA. And we're kind of trying to justify not doing a CSA. Um, but at the same time, it was kind of like that's how the money was being made at the time. And so, really just needing to go through the process and, you know, re-choose the CSA in a different way, maybe, which was the concept of like, can we do this, but without having to deliver? Because that was a point of drudgery for these farmers. They just didn't like driving and having to drive all the way to Ocean Beach, which was very, you know, really far away from their farm. So yeah, I have this table side by side here, and we have that CSA, no delivery, wholesale. They were doing a farm to school program, and so they were wanting to, you know, they were doing that as part of a grant. So they were going to have some grant funding. Um, this one's really expensive, interesting because it's a negative net profit here, and so this is important numbers that we're going to be looking at in terms of price points. Because when we're going to these wholesale markets, especially something like an institution, they don't want to pay a lot. They're used to paying very, very low prices. And so you're probably not going to be able to match anyone watching this. It's like definitely not going to be able to match that price. And that's where, you know, a farm to school grant comes in, or there's a bunch of local food purchasing dollars that are coming in from the federal and state governments to help support institutions to buy from local food. And so we can subsidize the cost of local food for those institutions. But just really kind of noting that wholesale to an institution will probably not make you money. And until you can change how you're harvesting. And this changes, though, you can also think of wholesale as like a restaurant as well, though. And so a restaurant would pay a higher price. And so that is choosing these prices, and how do we get these labor costs is really important in this summary. It's a huge table, friends. And that's why I'm here to help walk you through this. But this table is going to list all the crops. There's more crops than maybe you have. There's spaces for extra ones, but we're putting two main things in here. One, okay, is this cost here for this wholesale market price? How much can you sell your produce for? And so maybe you can only sell the lettuce to the school for $2.14 each. But, a restaurant is like knowing that there was a huge lettuce crisis and shortage. And at one point, they were paying $8 for a head of lettuce. Um, and so, wow, if you can put an $8 in, that's going to change the story for you. And so, the other part of this number, so that's your sale price, is how much money it costs to produce. And so this is to get to a real number of this, there's a course called Know Your Cost to Grow. And so that's a awesome program with Tanya Murray. She's doing more and more of this work, getting a lot of grant funding to put this course on. And I've taken the class, and if you love numbers, it's more numbers. It involves a lot of like tracking your time, to see how much, time, expenses, and how much profit you can make off, to know like, oh, should I plant a bed of, salad mix, or should I plant a bed of Brussels sprouts, in terms of like your value that you're going to get per bed. And so what I've done here is a much reduced version of that, which takes the assumption. My teacher Paul would always say, it's like harvest is like, over half the labor of a crop, like how long it takes you to cut and wash and pack. So I just used that assumption that I think it's like 3 times. I think I have it as 3 times. That looks about right. 26, 4 times as much. Yeah, it's about 4 times actually as much, per how long it takes you to harvest. And so it's a very rough assumption, but it's something to kind of go off of to gauge. And especially because harvest is that one thing that like has to get done. It's got to get out of the ground, and like when you're in it, like you keep going. And like, when I'm getting my CSA box delivered at 9 p.m., I know it's because that farmer is working, and like how fast he gets that harvest in is like when he can go home. And so other things like planting and weeding can kind of like fit in on the periphery, but like harvest is a very hands-on thing. So that's where you all come in, is when you're thinking of your product. I think arugula is a good example. Here we have a 0.4 pound bunch of arugula. So like maybe you're pulling it up and it's got roots on it, and you're twist tying that and washing that. And that's very different than a cut and come again bed of arugula. And so noting that, if you're going to have different ones, putting arugula as a half a pound bag instead of a bunch. And so that's going to affect, how long it takes to both harvest and wash that. And so these are numbers. These are standard numbers. So the farm that did this originally, I think they are good numbers, because this farm works with like varying skill levels of farmers. So hopefully they're like not like the premium fastest you would ever harvest stuff, just so that like we're not throwing numbers in there that are going to be off the record. But really making a point to track this. And it's not that hard. Is you can get your phone and set up 20 minutes and be like, how many heads of lettuce can I harvest in 20 minutes, or how many heads of lettuce can I wash in 20 minutes? Or if you're good, you can just get a stopwatch too, and just like start the stopwatch and finish it, or note when you start and finished a certain crop. So be careful of the like, I'm kind of a competitive person and like I always like to like do my PRs, personal records. So, I'm not trying to like race myself at that point. I want to be like an average thing. I want to, if I need to go to the bathroom during that time or something, or I need to respond to a call, like I'm going to include that because that's what my normal life is like. And Sienna is joining us. Welcome, Sienna. She gets logged in. Yeah, so this is that like back end number side. Welcome. And so you're only as good as the numbers you put into a spreadsheet. And so um, I think the step here with knowing the labor and how long it takes to like harvest things and our labor expenses, again, that's like, it feels like the if you had to start somewhere and that was too much, that would be this part that you could leave off because I think this tool is really good best for income projections again. So all these enterprise budgets, great for income, but I really enjoyed this like the labor piece too because it just gets you thinking about how much, how much is my time worth, and how long does that take to get that done. So um, that brings to mind, oh, here it is. Yes. At the top of this spreadsheet is also our hourly labor value. And so it's an interesting one to play with, especially as you're starting the farm and you're finding that your negative numbers, all the things. And so if you're like, well, I guess I have this off farm income. And so do I really need to be making my $27 an hour yet? And you're like, okay, well, let me do $10 an hour, just so you can start playing with the numbers. But then if a lot of these farms that I'm working with too, though, it's like you have salaried employees. And so they are getting paid, 20 bucks an hour plus payroll taxes and workers' comp. And so you're like, okay, that $20 an hour person's really $27 an hour. And you have to really keep those numbers in because you're like, nope, that is what it costs to pay this person to do this. And we need to make this work. And so how am we going to make this income stream work? Um, Sienna, welcome. We're jumping into CSA and wholesale enterprise budgets. They're in the classified resources folder. I think
I'm so sorry that I'm late and I'm disappointed that I am late because I was really yeah, excited to be a part of the conversation, but I'm so grateful for these resources. And I just
be gentle on
it's
yourself.
just funny jumping into this right now because the reason I'm late is because I was chatting with Greg. We were just having a conversation about our labor cost and budgets and pay raises and all of that. And so, yeah, feels relevant.
Yep. It's very relevant. Yeah. We just got started at 6 and we did a little background on like why numbers are important. And so we really are just getting into these enterprise budgets now. Lots of different ones to look at. And we're taking a look at this CSA wholesale one. And oh yeah, so this is the back end side of the data entry side. I can probably actually write enter data here. Start here. That's it. Some of the other ones I have better tabbed lines, but I like this like profitability ratio on the right side that I added in. It's just like, are you making money? Or are you losing money at this thing? And how bad are you losing money? Or how bad are you making? Or how much money are you really making on something? And so, like you're like this. Oh, cucumbers is a great example because like nobody buys cucumbers. Wow, 34 cents. Now let's like at least give cucumbers like a per pound. Oh, I see why it's 34 cents a pound. Let's say it's like $1 a pound. Oh, you're still losing money. Yeah. But everyone's got cucumbers and you're trying to sell your cucumbers too. And those cucumbers are same as the other cucumbers. It's like, and they're so labor intensive, man. You get some good glutes harvesting your cucumbers if they're on the ground, but that may pay some other bills, but not, yeah. That's a funny joke that I'm just
Wait, can I pause you for a second?
yes.
Will you explain that? I'm like, this is where my brain doesn't totally speak numbers. Like, will you explain the profitability ratio again? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what are these
Yes.
numbers telling you?
So what I'm doing is I'm comparing the cost to make that one unit of veggie to the profit that I make it at. And so essentially, I'm just taking one divided by the other. And you're going to start learning about ratios a lot. I don't even know them all. Like for when you make those loans, they're looking at your like debt to income ratio kind of thing. And so these numbers, like how much difference is there one way versus the other, tells a lender a lot, and then it can also tell us a lot. And so that's where I put the color coding here to kind of visually see the red means that it takes more labor than we are like making money on it. And so again, that know your cost to grow program really helps you dive in on a crop to crop specific, and it's like a ton of work to do that. It's worth it. And again, these are general numbers derived just from harvesting, but
Are these numbers that you uh is this real data or is this just like a demo?
this was real data from another farm. Yeah, and that works with farmers from a lot of different skill levels. So it's not necessarily a farmer that's like, oh, yeah, we are a farmer. We've been doing this for 10 years and we got this down. So I like to think that maybe the numbers are a little bit looser on things.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so this, like, you'd recommend, like, we would go through every crop and time it out and price it out for X number of time and like get an average, maybe?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, those numbers are really useful too for, especially on a farm where you have a lot of new people joining you. If Greg there is, he's doing the timing because Greg does it and he's done it a long time. And so everybody should be aspiring to harvest as fast as Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, that would be really cool. There was a really good graphic about kale harvesting. And if you harvest kale it's a great way to say if you harvest kale, at this, like, you can do 100 units in 40 minutes, like, we're going to be able to like make money on this thing. But if you harvest 100 units and, let's say if we drop in like 120 minutes, oh, then you're breaking even, it's like, oh, we're actually not making money. And if you're really taking your time and lollygagging out in the field and chatting, oh my gosh, now we're losing money
Mm.
on this kale. And so, like, this is oversimplified, but it is a good tool to kind of just see, like, we have to hit these targets and these numbers, and it's important. And if you want a raise, then you need to be hitting these numbers. And if you're not hitting those numbers, then sorry, you're still in the learning phase, and um, you got to ramp up. And it's a very concrete way to kind of set a clear standard.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because it makes a difference, as I was saying with Hannah, like these numbers, again, general, but we can't often change this like market price, like if we have internal systems, like I love how Farm Lab can buy internally their cucumbers and lettuce. And so they make the higher price point work for Farm Lab. But like if you're trying to sell to another entity, they're like, no, man, I can go buy from the wholesaler for $2. And like, yeah, I want your local lettuce, but I can do a 250, maybe. It's like your price margins on these veggies are just so small. And so that's what then kicks you back over into, okay, how can we make a harvest more and more efficient? And And then you start getting into the whole systems, and that's why people are growing lettuce on these huge scales with machines and like cheap labor that's got like bad practices and like these whole food industrial food system complexes that, what's the extent that you can compete with your efficiency costs to, compete on that wholesale market price. And so that's where the things we've been talking about, educating your customer and finding those customers that get it so you can really sell your kale bunch for $4 a bunch, and they're going to buy that because they appreciate it. And so, um, yeah, that's one thing, right? And so this spreadsheet is in a few of my different budgets. I don't have a good one, just saying up front, like I don't have a good budget for like a farmer's market set up right now. Or I have this one here for farm stand, but um, it's pretty specific. And if we are looking at, you pick sales, um, here's your 5-item, 5-veggie bag. You're not, maybe for these kind of things, because it's kind of hard to get those numbers, you just clump it. You're like, I'll sell you 5 items, for $10, or I'm going to jump over to your CSA one, into our CSA. Here's our CSA sale price. We're just selling each CSA for $30 each, right? And there's a fun little CSA box calculator tool here. And so, yeah, I guess.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's like, it's the different, I'm jumping around a lot, but yeah, just to demonstrate, it's like, okay, you have your wholesale price. You can, have this table and have it be for your farmer's market charts as well, and do your farmer's market prices in there. And that's something I'd be down to work with anybody. If they wanted to do an actual farmer's market, I'd be down to like adapt this and make one. I just haven't worked with a farm that does a farmer's market yet. Yeah, but I love this like CSA building tool just to really think through like what is your cost um, per your CSA box. This is going to pull in your total veggie costs based on the input you put in on that big chart, which says how much labor and time did it take to fill that box. So and this tracks back also, just to make a little ear note for our last class when we did harvest calendars, that when you all asked like, oh, why do you have a separate one for CSA versus your other ones? And it kind of goes back into the CSA box building tool where you're like, well, I always want 6 items. Or, you think I always want a value, I want my veggies to be, here's $24, for that box. But I want to be giving people a deal. So I'm only going to sell it for $20. Or I love to think of it as like a CSA box isn't saving money for the customer. It's an investment of supporting local agriculture. And so, yeah, you're only going to get $24 worth of veggies and you're going to pay $30, but that's because you're a diehard supporter and you want to support a farm. Or you can work with your EBT customers and you're like, here's this $30 box. And like, you're only going to have to pay X amount of dollars because instead we want to be promoting and creating access to your veggies, and applying for market match dollars and whatever other subsidies. So yeah, just thinking of like that's why the CSA is nice, because it just kind of helps take all your veggies and you're like, well, it's just this cost, $30. It makes the spreadsheets easier. And so let's dive into CSA one is a great one. So all of my enterprise budgets templates are going to have this same look to them. They have these yellow and gray cells. Some don't have that as much. It's an unedited one. Maybe no, it's in other versions. But so we're trying to enter just in the yellows, and these templates work the way they do because these are all, the blue is usually a complicated formula that if you change is going to like not calculate right. And so always happy to troubleshoot a document or some equations as if they ever get messed up. But yeah, I mean, you're really looking at these numbers here. You're like, here's my months at the top of the year. And how many delivery days are you doing CSAs? Once a week, twice a week? Are you, never doing 5 days? You use that as a week off, so, thinking of like how many delivery days per month. And this one's nice too. You're going to see it in for all like the wholesale budget. So when I'm delivering to florists, I deliver to them on Thursdays. And so the months that have 5 Thursdays, I'm going to put 5 Thursdays on here. And that's going to give me a really accurate estimate because I'm going to get an extra bonus, when you get paid every other week. And then one month you're like, oh, there's 3 pay periods in this one. It's like bonus money. You can kind of think of it that way, to just say, I'm just going to put 4 delivery days a month as like a low ball, and that's a conservative estimate. So if you want to be like, oh, I want to be really conservative, and or I want to be really accurate, it requires you looking at a calendar. So whichever fits for you. How many CSAs are you sending out a day? This assumes, again, like one box size. So we can adjust this in our office hours too. If we want to do different scales of CSAs, you have a large box and a small box, we'll just add another line and fix these calculations. And maybe that changes, like in the winter time, you want to do less, more in the summer, or vice versa. So these are the values you're going to be inputting here. And now into our CSA, how many miles is your delivery route? How many hours is it for packing? So again, remember when we did our kind of costs in our CSA veggie costs, we accounted for the time it took to grow that crop, harvest that crop, and wash that crop. And so all those numbers are roughly estimated already. And so now you're thinking of, which is really great, once your veggie is harvested and washed, now it's like a saleable product. And so am I going to sell this kale to this market stream, that market stream, or this market stream? All the work is the same from that point. That's where that know your cost to grow point is. It's like, know your cost to grow the kale, but at this point, all kale is equal. And now you're judging like, who's going to give me the best price, and how is that going to work? And so this packing is then you thinking, how long, I'm thinking of you, Sienna, you guys probably harvest all your stuff, put it in the fridge, and then maybe you pull that all out and then pack it into boxes. And so what is that? Packing your boxes, washing any boxes, sweeping the floors, and, loading up your truck, take for that piece, or, bringing it over to the pickup spot for y'all. There's a labor piece here. So that was packing hours. Here's your labor on delivery, how many hours it takes. This is real data for our farm. It took them 8 hours to be doing this like delivery stuff, right? And how many hours are you spending coordinating and printing out any kind of like harvest sheets or sales, or people doing custom CSA orders, some of that back end logistics. And if you needed to, you can change. These are all just your standard labors, but say whoever is doing your delivery driving, you're like, oh, they make less money. The person that's doing this coordination is making a higher wage. So you can change some of those numbers, but right now it's just that labor cost. And then here's where you can kind of judge how much you sell. And so your CSA box for having all this number is going to give you your total sales for the month, an estimated estimation of your expenses for the month, how much net you'll make. And then I love this. This number specifically is what I like the labor for, even if it's not the cost of labor, it's the hours. And so you're like, okay, it's going to take 16 and a half hours to go to build this box and to do the harvest for it. Do we have enough labor hours to do that? If you're thinking I'm by myself, so I had 2 full days, so I'm going to spend 1 full day harvesting all this stuff and 1 full day delivering it and doing some logistics. And you're like, you can kind of check. You're like, does that make sense? And I'm like, yeah, if I was by myself, I totally could do like a 30-member CSA, by myself on the harvest and pack kind of stuff. So, and then I love this piece of like the net profit per labor hour as well. This comes especially into play when you're comparing one thing to another. So let's go ahead and just snapshot this in our mind. Let's see, we're making $128 a week, 16 and a half hours, and this, okay, $1.94 per labor hour. Now let's switch to our no CSA. Holy smokes. We just increased our net, Oh, wait, sale price. We got to change that. Those got to be equal, friend. Okay, 30. That feels more realistic. You're tripled your net income. You decreased substantially how many hours per week you're working, and your profit per your labor hour increased by like fivefold, sixfold. And so as you look down here, you're seeing there's no transportation, your packing still the same. Mileage, there's no delivery hours, but oh, look, you have an extra hour because maybe now you're spending more time at setting up the pickup spot at your farm or doing some extra marketing. And, so you throw more time. And maybe that's going to be even, especially early on for a no delivery CSA, you're like, oh, actually, I'm going to have to put like 5 hours there because I'm going to be having to promote this because I'm trying to get more and more people to my farm. So, yeah, just to really see the difference that one decision can make and how this tool can be used to like really be like, ooh, that is pretty tempting, the no delivery one, right? But maybe you find actually I can't get that many customers, so I can only find 15 customers. And so now start putting, 15 on there and see how, that changes. And we're gonna look at our sales channel side by side to see really that, okay, no delivery, I can only get so many customers. Now I'm making $23,000 instead of 44. And you can kind of see, you're like, well, my net, my prices, but look at this labor. So, I'm hiring somebody here in this case to support. In this case, I wouldn't have to hire somebody. So, I mean, all of these numbers are so intimate for you. And so I'm just hoping to kind of try and just throw some examples of like how you can use it to just like make decisions. Like, what's your question you're trying to answer? So that we can like create the spreadsheet to best hit that need.
Did you make this whole workbook?
Yes, I think I pulled an original expense template from some document, and then I've just been building. And as I've been working with other farmers, I just like keep building new spreadsheets, and I really love spreadsheets. So I've built the food shed one I'm pretty proud of my food shed one. I've spent many hours building it as a tool to help food shed farmers know what they're signing up for. But,
Yeah. This is incredible. And like, it feels like such a gift to just be given this and be able to plug in our numbers and adjust as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask the total sales per year, total expenses per year, where are those numbers coming from?
These are getting pulled from your spreadsheet. So here we have our sales per month and then the year-end date. But how I really, that's nice for this comparison side by side. Depends on who you're talking to, right? We had to create this side by side because this farm had to talk to like, not the next layer, not that layer, but like this person over here. So it's like, how can they present information in a way that is going to hit their needs? For me, I don't use this expenses actually for my cash flow budget. I take this sales. I take this, what are my estimated sales incomes? And I pop that into my annual cash flow budget. And that's where I get more of an accurate expenses when I'm doing that cash flow budget. And so that's another class to take. Yeah. But, which I'm sure, for thinking of you, you're probably being given targets, income targets by your management, perhaps. And they want to know, hey, I need you to make $10,000 a month. And you're like, okay, how do I make $10,000 a month? And how many labor hours do I have to make that happen? And so you can kind of be using these spreadsheets to be like, okay, well, if we do a CSA, I can make this much money, and I'm doing this restaurant sales over here. And that's where your wholesale budget might come really in handy. Is taking a look at all your crops and how much. And so you can start thinking of your chef, and you're like, that's 300 heads of lettuce. That was all farm to school stuff. You're delivering to him. Maybe you're doing it like number of delivery days per month. This was a school, they wanted it twice a month. You'd be like, we're doing it eight times, right? Getting your lettuce there. And he's going through how much lettuce, he wants like every other day, he wants like 10 heads of lettuce kind of thing. So you're looking at per delivery, what are you giving your chef, and how that's changing per the month. And so again, this ties back to that harvest calendar that you were thinking of, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of go back and be like, all right, we said we wanted to send our chef green beans for July and August, and he's going to want 10 pounds of green beans. As long as we have them, let's pop those in. And, he's going to be wanting leeks in the winter in this February time frame. And that's what we're planning for him. So you're just starting to pop that budget in. And so you can start getting that sales per month to your chef. And and I'm not sure if you've negotiated too, that's where you come back into your wholesale market price. You're like, how much is he buying that lettuce for from the farm? I'm sure you guys have actually, but popping those numbers in here so that you can get a real sense of like how much you're planning to sell to the restaurant, instead of it just being this kind of like, oh yeah, they're going to just take it all. And you're like, yes, they can take, be really dynamic in a lot of ways, but there's some things that I think you can be, like, okay, yeah, we're always going to be doing the lettuce and your amazing spicy salad mix, which is so good there. That's always going to be on the menu. Kohlrabi, they will always have to take because no one else buys your kohlrabi. Sorry, that was from your social media. I loved your kohlrabi promotion. Yeah. Big kohlrabi grill out. I loved it. Good education. So that's how you would be taking a look then at your chef budget. And I wonder if you could like duplicate this actually and do a separate one for the harvest market as well. So, and as like Kendra can kind of probably give you some actual numbers of like, okay, well, this is how much I'm selling of these different things. And, you're tracking that so that like next year you're like can plan on that a little bit better. You're like, well, we didn't sell that much kale bunches, but we're still in construction and it was opening. People were going for other food, but once all the houses are open, man, we're expecting that to like quadruple because the customers are going to be there. We expect them to be there. So,
yeah, the forecasting I think will definitely be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like some of the hardest stuff is like getting started in this and just like putting a number to like, okay, this is what we're tracking and kind of thinking of. And, especially for you all, I was saying, how often do I check in on this? And I try and check in on it at least in June, in 6 months to be like, okay, is this really happening? Or am I like totally off? And like, when I checked in this past year for my business, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally off. We are like so off on these grocery things. I thought we were going to be selling all these bouquets for this high price point, and we actually are selling less bouquets for a lower price point. And that really messed up our numbers and our cash flow. So I was like, okay, how do we pivot? And it was like, okay, our best pivot point is actually bringing Fox Point online and selling to you all and being able to hit the price point we needed on certain bouquets. And we got to really promote and bring another flower shop on for these next months. And then bam, we all of a sudden started hitting all our targets. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this feels great. This is good. I'm totally, hitting all my weekly sales targets, because that's really what, to be doing these checks ideally on a weekly basis. That's like super ideal. I'm not there yet, but monthly, to be like, how much income am I making, a month on this? So, all these sales per month, I'm adding them all up from all my different enterprises and my cash flow. And I'm like, every week I need to be making, $3,300 a month, say, and then I can easily pull those reports from my accounting software and be like, all right, I'm short. Okay, what am I going to do next month to make up for that? Or, oh, we're over. That's great. Let's keep going business as usual. But that was really helpful for us, and especially in like the cold, slow start to the flower season. It was like, oh my gosh, we are so under what we want. Next year, let's not plan for flowers in March, because they're just not coming in yet. I'd rather under plan and make more money than,
Yeah.
it's a very tight monies come March and April for us. So yeah, and that's why the whole CSA model started in the first place, right? Was to get people to pay money up front in those colder season months, to then give the money to be able to like do the thing. But I love that. And I would love to see more farms being able to have like consistent cash flow and be able to have it build up enough income so that they have what monies they need to like start their season off well. So yeah, practices like we put 10% every quarter of our sale, 10% of our sales every quarter into a savings. And so then at the end of the year, we're like, oh wow, look, savings. Now what do we do with this money? Is this profit? Distribute it, reinvest, keep it in savings, those things. Yeah, look at this total expenses.
I was just gonna ask about that.
Those seem really high.
Is that pulling from the like time,
Yep.
and is anything like the cost of the seed or the cost of the rubber bands or like rent or water, any of those things factored in or no?
No. Yeah. It's like the expenses in these spreadsheets are really estimates to get a sense of an idea, but that's really like I'm using this for the income projections, and then my cash flow has much better expenses on that, all those things.
And sorry, when you say cash flow, what do you mean?
I know I was like, I need to pull up my cash flow budgets and show you all. I just started my 2025 cash flow budget. These are real numbers from my business. I never mind showing. So this on the left side, basic bookkeeping. This is my chart of accounts. These are my different income sections. So what am I making income on? And then the below is my expenses. So I have cost of goods sold. These are cost of goods specific for different things. So if I have herbal product specific expenses, flower designing specific expenses, those go in here. And then below, I'm going to have all my general expenses. So so Good Roots, formerly Kitchen Table Consultants, they have an amazing recommended chart of accounts to use.
Okay.
So your fixed expenses are, and my G&A expenses are all your overhead costs. So overhead costs are things that like your rent, things that don't change. My insurance cost, depreciation, marketing is all up in that upper part, the overhead expenses. And then anything. And then you have direct expenses, and those are things that change. So if I'm growing more lettuce and harvesting more lettuce, I'm going to have to buy more lettuce seed and hire more people. And so anything that's directly related to how much you're going to be growing of something is comes down into your like direct expenses. And I'm going to pop some resources in on that too. But these expenses, this is really where I do deep dive into all my expenses. And so getting started, it's a big estimate, you know. You're going to probably have a ton of money in small tools and equipment. Pretty proud of that number. It's pretty low. I plan for a lot more because I like buying tools.
So all these numbers are like what you actually spent, right? Like it's not a projection in that sense. Is that kind of the idea of what cash flow means then?
Yeah, I mean the cash, not necessarily. Cash flow is like how much money do you have coming in and out, so that like you can see up here. I said March and April are tough months. Like luckily I have a savings account, but like my checking, I'm not going to have money because I'm not going to have the cash income coming in to meet my expenses. And so in any given month, you want to make sure that you have enough income to like cover your expenses, or you have enough savings to cover those expenses. And so that's why like people go to year round growing, because oh yeah, you make tons of money here, no money in those off seasons. And so it's like you really have to build up this, you know, these are my goals. So by the end of this year, we need to have this much money in our checking and savings so that we can like survive, you know, or, you know, we look at those cash flow numbers, yeah, incomes, because, you know, there's plenty of banks that will float you a loan, you know, to just cover your 1 month. But they're usually pretty high interest. So, and usually only given to businesses that have been around for at least like 3 years. Okay. Some banks are now lending to businesses that have been around for 2 years, but most it's like a 3 year. You need 3 years of financials. So I'm doing a cash flow. I did it before I started the farm, and before I had real numbers. And then every year I get to just like update it and add to it. And so that's where having, you know, I got a good start on my cash flow because I paid close attention when I worked at Wild Willow, and it was like, oh, yep, I know I'm going to have this liability insurance big time. My rent is here. Like, you just pop in the things that you know. And my website's going to be costing stuff. My software for my bookkeeping's here. I'm gonna have to print a lot of flyers. I know I'm gonna want to have a nice Christmas meal here, you know. I really want to make sure I have enough budgeted so that we can take the staff out for coffee and lunches as we need to. I want to make sure I have my accountant here and accounting time. I want to make sure I have some spare money for bookkeeping support or a lawyer. I just kind of like put placeholders for monies to be going out. The biggest thing is your payroll stuff, though. So when we started this, we had no payroll for anybody, no taxes, no comp, but we did have our guaranteed payments to ourselves, and that was zero for the first year. We didn't pay ourselves. But in my cash flow budget, I still put at least $50. That's like the one thing you should at least energetically say, I'm at least going to give myself something. And so putting it in the books so that, you know, I'm putting the higher amount. And then, you know, I do know, hey, that's a place that I can kind of give a little bit in this bigger budget. Or maybe I don't want to give myself as many fancy tools and I got to like cut that budget. Or, oh, I have an obsession with irrigation supplies. So maybe I shouldn't spend so money on irrigation things. But really the seeds and plants, that was a big one, you know.
Did you build this off of almost like an initial QuickBooks template or something? Or did you just like put this together?
I had different cash flow budgets that I got from, I took an FFI course. Here's my 2023 one. Yeah. So very similar. Yeah, I like, this is a nice one because it's coded and colored really well. So this is my cash in the bank total, and then last year I really wanted to see savings versus checking. So 2024, I put savings and checking up at the top. Yeah, this one's a little bit easier to read. The one I just showed you, the 2025, was my actual QuickBooks. I did my 2024 profit and loss statement, pulled that out, and I was like, I know my expenses are going to be pretty darn similar next year, unless I want to add in some like extra employees. But in terms of, yeah, how many jars I bought in and how much potting soil I used and fertilizers, like that's, those numbers were going to be the same. But, look at this, my small tools, I gave myself $100 a month for that. In 2024, I gave myself $400 a month. Like repairs and maintenance, making sure I have money set aside for that. This is a nice budget because it really shows me my direct costs versus the overhead costs, and that's a good learning tool to really understand bookkeeping. Yeah, so that all these enterprise budgets, they enter in up at the top here, and so line by line, I just copy and paste them over and bring them in. You could have them in the same, have it directly in your same spreadsheet, so that it could be live updating. But I tend, in my mind, how I'm thinking of things, I'm really looking at my enterprise budgets, and then it's like the cash flow is just like a summary one. And so my enterprise budgets gets really messy as I'm doing things and making copies of things. I'm like, oh, well, let me try this scenario over here. And so I'm running multiple scenarios in my enterprise budget ones and then pulling my favorite, the one I decided on. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the one I'm going to do. Copy this one over. And now I have all my versions every year of all the different things, which is great because now I'm bringing herbal products back in. I'm like, oh, didn't I make some like enterprise budgets for that? I'm like, yes, I did. Good job, Kat. Oh my gosh, now I have somewhere to start, Yeah, so that's where these numbers come in here. Income, and then these are real expenses where I'm not going to copy over expenses from my enterprise budgets because those are just kind of estimates for, again, like experimenting and understanding those enterprises and how they compare to one another, more of like an evaluation tool. And here's my actual expenses. So yeah, so that's too where, I'm thinking of something like for you, Sienna, is like, maybe Brian, he's got all these expenses and his numbers are here and Greg's is working here, and your job may be more just to like, hey, how much sales can we get to this restaurant? And so that's where you're like, okay, my job is to just look at, I'm in charge of the restaurant account and other Sienna's in charge of the CSA. And so you all would be managing your own kind of like enterprise budgets to meet those income targets. And they may have like, limits to be like, okay, and then, here's your budget too. You can only spend X amount on your harvest supplies, X amount on labor. And so you need to meet your income target and not over exceed these expense targets. And so, and it's a good way to really just think about the business too, is that these different enterprises all have to support the farm in one way or another. And, to really have some like, it's going to give people agency to do their work. Right. And so like we're trying to set up a pop-up market, and Ani's like, okay, here's how much money it's going to cost. And I can be like, oh yeah, well, that's great because I've already put on, this whole year we've had $1,200 for marketing supplies, and we've only used like 50 of that. And so I can easily say yes, or I don't even need to be part of that. I'm like, Ani, you have $1,500 to like do whatever you want and make this work. It's what's in the budget. We decided and we agreed this was our budget, and you need to have that agency to be able to make these spending purchases to like do your job. And so, if I don't give her that number, she's always going to be checking, how much is this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And you're just like, I don't need to know all those details. Here's your money. I trust you to spend it, and then make it happen. And so,
yeah, there's like freedom in the structure.
yep. Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's numbers, we can make whatever reality we want with numbers. And the more I've worked with numbers, I was like, now I know how Trump got so rich, or these rich people got so rich. Cause it's like, you can like tell whatever story you want and like make it happen. Like there's so much power that comes from this. These documents, and it's like, that's why you gotta take a look what's up. And as we're talking about the big systematic stuff, and you start getting into like, wow, the food system's really messed up, and you're like, oh wait, do I really want to be participating in that? Like, look at these numbers, look how much I'm losing. And you're like, oh, maybe I want to shift towards this other type of customer, or educating this other customer instead. I can't fight this system, but I can work to create a system that's going to support me. And I'm going to find other people that also believe in this. And like, yes, we can make this work. So I'm committed. I'm committed to finding ways to make it work. And we're like, I can make it work and have this off farm income. And look, see, I can pay myself, do I have my guaranteed payments in here first? Let's see. Cat, yep. We were only paying Ani, and not even, but until the end of the year. So that was our like first real year of business, was neither of us taking money. Ani had off farm income here. I had savings, and then I started another job. So that was my money. And that was like, okay, she needs to make money from the farm kind of thing. And so putting those numbers in there. They're powerful.
Yeah, even just to see them now is helpful.
Well, we did start late, but it is now 7:15. So a reminder that there's a bunch of examples in the resources folder, and office hours are next Tuesday. So don't pay attention to election news, everybody. Dive into numbers and find empowerment for your future to create the world that you want to live in within your community. Take the power back. And maybe for office hours, I will be at a lavender farm out in Valley Center, which I'm really excited about. I'm doing a trade for consulting work to spend the night in their little cottage.
So cool.
Surround myself by some lavender. That's where I'll be. Yeah. That was pretty good. Okay. Yeah, good on the numbers. I know there's going to be questions, but they're probably going to come up a little bit later. I'm guessing. But anything that comes to mind before I end the recording for people watching later that they might find helpful?
Is it? Oh, okay. Now I see it. I just didn't see it in the Google folder for a second, but I found it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see
I feel like I will have questions, but I need to go through, like I want to go through with the budgets, and then maybe this is just such great timing because I had like started to make one for us, and yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And yeah, if you want to use yours ones too and bring that to me. I love spreadsheets. So whatever you have, I can work with to take a look at. And even if you want to email it me ahead of time, so I can just take a glance at it before jumping into office hours.
It looks like a shopping list right now, Kat. So like,
oh, that's perfect. Oh, well, then let me.
It's like very, very basic, but I'm like excited to draw inspiration from yours and then kind of go from there.
Oh, that makes me. I mean, I love numbers. I'm going to do another class on numbers, but just showing this was my farm startup cost. So when I was starting the farm, Yeah, I literally made a list of all the things I thought I would want, how many of them. Oh, I gave it a priority rating. That's helpful. Where I would get it from, how much it would cost, and like, what was my total? $16,000, And it's just like, I remember sharing this with a bunch of a group of other new farmers, and they're like, wait, what? And I was like, I mean, look at this like electric cart. We didn't get that, but gopher traps, squirrel traps. Like, I mean, those numbers like really add up.
Yeah.
Like shade cloth, like, oof, how did we ever grow without shade cloth before?
Mhm.
Um,
Would you would you mind or feel comfortable sharing this?
oh yeah, for sure. I'll make a copy.
Wait, this is so amazing because this is like what I've been building myself.
Yeah, I love
It looks,
sharing this one. Yeah,
yeah.
because I feel like it's a pretty comprehensive list. Because I'm like, I'm putting everything on my list.
But
But
you kind of have to
yeah,
because everything adds up. Like, I
yep,
don't know, today we were like, oh, we need another spray bottle for bleach or something, and
yeah,
it's all everything counts.
yeah, yeah. It really adds up. We still don't have WD-40 on, and I laughed at last week. We're like, we need WD-40. We're like, how do we not have WD-40 on the farm? Um, yeah, go for traps. Yeah, that's like tools and equipment. And then, you know, for you, Hannah, too, this is all like business LLC stuff. There's a lot of startup costs too that goes into it. And
Yeah, that's wow, this is gonna be so helpful. That's a lot of stuff I've been researching lately of like especially like insurance and just like
oh, yeah,
yeah, there's
minimum $1,200 for your insurance.
a minimum $1,200. Yeah, see, that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, they all have minimums. I think it's like a $750 minimum, but then they have to add all these other things on. So it's really like
Yeah.
gets up to 1,200 there. So my gosh, yeah, the dibbler thing, that was huge. I loved that thing. There's just certain things that I was like, nope, I need that. I don't want to spend time. Even bigger infrastructure stuff. Yeah, packaging. Yeah, it's pretty messy, but sure. Oh, and there's an example list too, I guess I brought in from another stuff, all the different stuff they'd want. Oh, yeah, my original Farm Lab expenses. There you go. That's fun. And that was kind of stuff too, I was working as a satellite for ecology center. And so
Mhm.
some of those like expense tracking stuff that I don't know. I guess I just did it too because I was wanting to learn. I don't know if this was necessarily expected of me, but kept track of it because I wanted to learn um, and like know these things and have supply lists. And yeah, yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah, startup costs are different than your ongoing costs. And so, too, for you at Fox Point there, Sienna, you're still kind of in this like, you're in that weird spot where it's like startup still and ongoing. And you're just like, wait, this is actually a startup cost, but I'm kind of in the ongoing phase right now. And that was our second year too, was like still needing a lot of stuff. A lot of fun tools, shade cloth, greenhouse, that all came in year two. It's kind of funny how you're like, okay, I'll make do with this. And then, at some point you got to move your microgreens and get the lamps in, right? So yeah, the financials, the numbers. Yeah, and then once you get into it too, it's just like, oh yeah, now I know this and I can do the numbers and starting to just really read through your P&Ls when they get sent over to you, reports of sales reports when, you know, people are sending those over. It's just, we may not understand all of it all the time, but just like kind of looking at it, you're like, okay, I'm looking at numbers these are telling me things, you know, and then
Mhm.
eventually it just like webs in and oh, that's what I was going to do is get this cooperative farming, see if I can pull up some like bookkeeping financial resources for y'all. Yeah. USDA, National Farmers Union. Aha, this one's really good. Can I put a link in a Google folder?
Probably. Um,
Oh yeah, definitely. It's Poppy Davis. That's her name. She is epic. I freaking love this woman. Every time she teaches, I just learn so much. So this link I put in is the National Farmer Union Toolbox, and they have a bunch of different things. I love the one too on like business formation, people, land, and activities, a framework for structuring a farmer ranch business. Hannah, that one's on your assignment list. But really the accounting stuff, she knows numbers. And so the videos, she's got the third and fourth videos, introduction to farm and ranch accounting frameworks and bookkeeping systems, bookkeeping setup, cleanup, and maintenance. She also has one on taxes too, two of them on taxes. And so just all really good stuff. I try and just, I feel like I took 3 different types of workshops on like bookkeeping before I was like, okay, this. So, um,
this is awesome. Wow. All these videos are just like out here for
yeah,
free.
there are so many resources out there. And so the Food System Alliance is putting together a nice like directory of resources for farmers. And, you know, it's always 2 weeks away from being released. So hopefully by the end of the year, it's been a huge undertaking that they've done. So they have a good list, but I personally too have like a pretty in-depth list of different resources I found over the years. So if you're ever looking for stuff,
Yeah.
it's out there. There's somebody who's done it. That's like the mindset I just have with it all. I'm like, somebody's done this somewhere. So let me not reintroduce the wheel.
Yeah. It's a good one.
I paste a link more. What if I did a little like Google Sheets called links and resources? Mm-hmm. Yeah, such a good one. That's a really good one. The SARE documents. I don't know if this is relevant, but yeah. Guide to business structures. This is one of my favorite ones to send to people that are looking about different business entity types. Sarah's got another one too. Ah, there it is.
Hannah, I'm just looking at it looks like they offer a course as well, which might be interesting too. Beginning Farmer Institute for like current or soon to be like farm.
Is this the same like National Farmers Union link that you were looking at?
Yeah, on that page,
Oh, in the
it
beginning.
said there were like in the top section, it's like consider participating in our general farmer education programs. These include Women's Conference and Beginning Farmer Institute. So I just like clicked that link and it took me to a different page. I can put it in the chat.
Oh, well, yeah, I found it.
Um,
There's also Sierra Harvest has like a pretty I love them all. I love all the classes. I'm like, give me all the classes.
yeah.
And just like the people that you get to meet and the other farmers, I'm like, it's just like always worth my time. Yeah. Just in a thing too, just like thinking of the California Farm Link, they have their Resiliator program. It's only open to farms that have been open for 2 years at least. But if you go through their training program, then they offer you 0% interest loans.
Whoa.
It's like unreal. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to aspire to do that. Have a 0% interest loan. That's great. We did Be Worthy. We did the Kiva loan, and we had a 0% interest loan through Kiva, crowdsourced
No
funding.
one who used to work for Kiva.
Oh yeah,
That's really
it's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we raised like $11,000, more than that. I don't remember.
Have you ever looked at Steward?
I have a bunch, and they keep. Last I heard, they were still stuck trying to get allowed to give loans in California.
Oh, no way. Shoot.
Yeah.
Because theirs is a similar like crowdfunding. I think.
Mhm. Yep. It's crowdfunding, but then it works. I think it has to work as a loan still. So that's why in California, they need to go through all the hoops to be a certified like lender.
Bummer.
Yeah,
They're like a really cool platform.
I know. It's like, especially it's like very farm specific. And
Yeah.
so that woman, that might be the way. Somebody was asking me at the farm on my tour I did on Saturday. She's like, no, really, how can I support small farms? And and I was like, and like this is the type of stuff that would be super supportive is lending.
Yeah.
Like it's, reinvesting. People have monies and dollars and
Yep. Yeah.
all right. Well, I see you with your meal. My dinner's on the stove.
Yeah, I've been making food in the background.
That's great.
Well, yeah, this is like incredible. I know I'm definitely gonna have questions too because I feel like there's like so much to take in, but I'm like blown away by all of the resources that you just like provided for us in
Same.
like I like it. It's insane. The amount of time that I have like the amount of brain power I have put into even just trying to build something kind of like this, which I know I'm not like
Oh yeah.
in it yet, but it takes me a lot to like really put this type of stuff together. So I am so grateful that this is here and you have like put in this work and that you're sharing it with us. It's really incredible.
Yeah, like never mind the formulas and the cross-referencing, but I feel like even like, oh, the months are in columns versus in rows, and this color is here, and this like I feel like all these things really matter, and it takes a lot of brain power to think about.
Yeah, brain power. Yeah, and all the things. I'm like done all the classes and pulled the different resources from the different places and adapted them, and that's like part of the thing. It's Got to pay it forward. I relied on other people and just keep
Mm.
paying it forward. Someone once told me, start writing the book now on what you're doing, Kat, because people are going to need this. So I was like, oh, okay. Let's keep track of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the motivation to like have office hours because I feel like if I keep that as a date, it'll like force me to like do some work on this and then bring it and workshop it or something next week.
Yeah. Or the worst thing is, worst case, you give it accountability buddy. So as you're doing the work, you can, at least have somebody there. Because that's part of it. I remember one time I had this huge accounting problem. And I was like, honey, I can't do this. And she's like, what do you need from me? I was like, just stand there next to me. She was like, okay. And I'm like doing the thing. She's like, can I go now? I'm like, no, you can't go now. I just needed somebody like there to like do the thing with.
Mm.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what we need. Cool. Well, I'm really gonna let you go this time. Thanks for the appreciations. I'm glad it's helpful. And yeah, hopefully see you next week.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good week, lady.
Bye.
Bye.